The Wyoming Territory stretched endlessly under the pale blue April sky of 1876. The Grayson farm stood as a testament to stubborn survival. 3 wooden buildings and a large barn clustered against the vast, unforgiving plains. Nora Grayson's fiery red hair, usually bound tightly beneath a bonnet, now blew freely in the bitter wind. The 26-year-old widow stood straight-backed before a fresh grave, her pale fingers clutching a tattered handkerchief. James Grayson, her husband of 6 years, was being lowered into the ground after an attack attributed to the Lakota 2 weeks prior. The small gathering of mourners, mostly Robert's family, kept their distance from Eliza. Their whispers carried to her on the wind. That red hair. Martha Grayson, Robert's mother, muttered to her other son, David, "I told him not to marry her. Hair like fire brings nothing but disaster." Eliza tightened her grip on 4-year-old Lydia's small hand. Child stared at the wooden box containing her father with confusion, too young to understand the permanence of death. A cough rattled through the little girl's chest, and Eliza pulled her closer. As the last shovelful of dirt fell upon the grave, Judith approached Eliza with narrowed eye. "You've brought enough misfortune to this family," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Robert would be alive if not for your cursed hair." Eliza lifted her chin. "My hair had nothing to do with the attack, Mother Grayson. Robert chose to ride out alone despite the warnings." "Blasphemy," Judith hissed. "You'll not speak ill of my son on the day we bury him." That evening, as rain began to fall in heavy sheets across the farm, Eliza put a feverish Lydia to bed in the small room they'd occupied since Robert's death. The child's forehead burned against Eliza's palm. A sharp knock at the door startled her. Judith stood in the doorway, David's hulking form behind her. "You'll not be sleeping in this house anymore," Judith announced. "Your presence here is unwelcome." "What are you saying?" Eliza's voice trembled despite her effort to sound strong. "The barn is where you'll stay. You're not family. You never were. You're the red-haired witch who brought death to my son." David stepped forward, his eyes sliding over Eliza in a way that made her skin crawl. "Mother's right. Bad luck follows you, Eliza. The barn is appropriate. Lydia is sick with fever." Eliza protested. "She needs warmth, medicine." "Take what you need for the girl," Judith interrupted, "but be out of this house within the hour." As the door slammed shut, Eliza sank to her knees beside Lydia's bed. The little girl's eyes fluttered open, glazed with fever. "Mama," she whispered, "where are we going?" Eliza gathered her daughter into her arms, wrapping her in every blanket she could find. "Just for a little while, my love. Just until you're better." She carried Lydia through the rain to the barn, each step a silent promise that somehow she would find a way to save her daughter and escape this cruel place. The barn smelled of hay and horse, the familiar scents offering small comfort as Eliza arranged a makeshift bed in the hayloft. Lydia's fever had worsened during their short journey through the rain, her small body now trembling uncontrollably. "It hurts, Mama," she whimpered. "I know, my darling." Eliza dampened a cloth with water from the bucket kept for the horses and placed it on Lydia's forehead. "Try to sleep now." The rain hammered against the barn roof as night deepened. Eliza sat beside her daughter, singing softly until Lydia's breathing steadied in fitful sleep. Only then did she allow herself to weep, silent tears that fell unchecked as she considered their desperate situation. Charleston seemed a lifetime away now. 6 years ago she'd been Miss Eliza Harrington, a school teacher with bright prospects. James Grayson had swept into her life with promises of adventure and freedom in the West. The reality had been far different. Isolation, hard work, and a husband who grew increasingly distant. A crash from below startled Eliza from her thoughts. She froze, listening intently. The barn door had opened and closed. Footsteps, heavy and uneven, stumbled across the wooden floor. Eliza's hand closed around the leather-cutting knife she'd brought from the house. She crept to the edge of the loft and peered down. A man stood swaying beneath her, one hand braced against a support beam, tall and broad-shouldered. His uniform, what remained of it, marked him as a soldier, but it was the blood and mud that covered him from head to boot that made Eliza's breath catch. His face, barely visible in the dim light filtering through the cracks in the wall, was a mask of exhaustion and pain. As if sensing her presence, the man looked up. Their eyes met, and Eliza saw something unexpected there. Not menace, but desperation. "Who are you?" And silence. "That's all I need." A bolt of lightning illuminated the barn, revealing more details of the stranger. His dark hair was matted with blood, and a fresh wound sliced across his arm. Despite his imposing height, he seemed ready to collapse. "You're a deserter," Eliza realized aloud. The man's silence confirmed her suspicion. Lydia's cough echoed through the barn, and the stranger's gaze shifted toward the sound. "Your child is sick," he observed. Eliza tightened her grip on the knife. That's none of your concern. The man reached carefully into a pouch at his belt, movements deliberate to show he meant no harm. He extracted a small leather packet. I have medicine, he said. Herbs that might help with fever, I learned. He paused, then continued more quietly. I learned from people who know these things. Indians. Eliza's voice held disbelief and fear. The man nodded once. I'm not your enemy, ma'am. I'm just a man who's seen too much death. He swayed slightly, steadying himself against the beam. My name is Elias Rowe. I was a lieutenant with the 7th Cavalry until 3 days ago. Another flash of lightning revealed the exhaustion etched into his features. He looked up at Eliza with clear eyes despite his condition. I can help your child, he said. After that I'll go. You'll never see me again. You have my word. The herbs smelled bitter as Jonas crushed them between his fingers and added them to the cup of hot water. Dawn was still hours away, the storm continuing unabated outside the barn walls. Eliza watched him from the edge of the hayloft, the knife never far from her hand. She had allowed him to climb up, but maintained a wary distance as he prepared. The medicine. What exactly are these herbs? She asked. This eases the fire in her body, Jonas explained, his voice low. And this, he held up a dried leaf, is sage. Helps with the cough. The Lakota healer who taught me called it the purifier. And how does a cavalry lieutenant come to learn medicine from the very people he's supposed to be fighting? Jonas's hand stilled momentarily. 2 winters ago I was separated from my unit during a blizzard. Should have frozen to death, but a hunting party found me. Instead of taking my scalp, they took me to their healer. His eyes met hers. They saved my life. Lydia's cough interrupted them, more violent than before. The child thrashed in her makeshift bed, her face flushed with fever. She's getting worse, Eliza said, fear evident in her voice. She looked at the cup in Jonas's hands, torn between distrust and desperation. Why did you desert? She asked suddenly. Jonas's jaw tightened. 3 days ago we received orders to raid a Lakota village. Not warriors, just women, children, and elders. His voice grew harder. I refused. When I tried to warn them, my own commanding officer shot me. He pulled aside his torn shirt to reveal a bandaged wound on his shoulder. I managed to escape in the confusion, but now I'm hunted for treason. Lydia cried out in her sleep, and Eliza made her decision. She took the cup from Jonas and moved to her daughter's side. Help me sit her up, she instructed. Together they raised the semi-conscious child. Eliza held the cup to Lydia's lips while Jonas supported her back. Small sips, little one, he murmured. Why are you helping us? Eliza asked as Lydia drank. You're risking your safety by stopping here. Jonas looked away. There's been too much suffering, too many innocent lives lost. He gently touched Lydia's hair. I couldn't pass by without trying to help. As Lydia finished the medicine and settled back into fitful sleep, Jonas moved away, positioning himself against the barn wall where he could watch both the door below and the loft entrance. You should rest, he told Eliza. I'll keep watch. Eliza settled beside her daughter but kept her eyes on the stranger. If you try anything, I won't, he interrupted quietly. There is honor on both sides of this war, Mrs. Grayson, though few care to see it. Get some sleep, dawn comes early, and with it your family. As exhaustion finally claimed her, Eliza's last thought was that Elias Rowe was unlike any soldier she had ever met. Eliza woke to sunlight streaming through cracks in the barn roof. For a moment she was disoriented, then the events of the previous day came rushing back. She sat up abruptly, searching for Jonas. He sat exactly where he'd been when she fell asleep, his back against the wall, eyes alert despite the exhaustion evident in his posture. His gaze met hers, then shifted to Lydia. The child slept peacefully beside her, her breathing easier, her forehead cool to Eliza's touch. The fever broke, Eliza whispered in relief. Jonas nodded once. The herbs worked. She'll need another dose this evening, but the worst has passed. As he shifted position, his collar moved, revealing ugly scars that curved around his neck, marks of torture or captivity. Noticing her stare, Jonas adjusted his shirt to cover them. Indian work, she asked quietly. U.S. Army, he corrected, his voice flat. When I returned after living with the Lakota, they thought I'd gone native, a traitor. His lips curled bitterly. They wanted names, locations, but you didn't give them. No, Eliza studied him with new understanding. You're not just a deserter running from duty. You're a man caught between two worlds. Jonas looked away. I've seen butchery on both sides, Mrs. Grayson, but at least the Indians are fighting for their homes, their way of life. His voice dropped. I was at Washita River, saw women and children burned alive in their teepees while my fellow soldiers laughed. His hand clenched into a fist. After that I couldn't pretend anymore. The sound of approaching footsteps silenced them both. Jonas moved swiftly into the shadows as the barn door opened below. Martha Grayson's voice echoed up to the loft. "Eliza, are you decent?" Eliza smoothed her wrinkled dress and moved to the edge of the loft. "Yes, Mother Grayson." The older woman climbed the ladder awkwardly. A small bundle in one hand, she thrust it toward Eliza without meeting her eyes. Inside was a piece of bread, a small chunk of cheese and an apple. "This is all I could spare," she said stiffly. Eliza accepted it with as much dignity as she could muster. "Thank you. Lydia's fever has broken." Judith glanced at the sleeping child with narrowed eyes. "She doesn't look that sick to me. I suspect you exaggerated her condition for sympathy. Why would I? To make us seem heartless." Judith interrupted. "To paint yourself as the suffering widow." Her gaze swept the hayloft. "You've made yourself quite comfortable here." "Perhaps too comfortable," she sniffed suspiciously. "What's that smell?" "Herbs. A tea," Eliza said quickly. For Lydia's cough, Judith's mouth tightened. "David says you're not entitled to Robert's portion of the farm. He's riding to town today to speak with the lawyer." Her eyes hardened. "You don't belong here, Eliza. You never did. Even that red hair marks you as different. Unnatural." After Judith departed, Jonas emerged from his hiding place. "Charming woman," he remarked dryly. Eliza divided the meager food, insisting Jonas take half despite his protests. As they ate in silence, Lydia stirred and opened her eyes. "Mama," she called weakly. Eliza went to her daughter immediately. "I'm here, darling." Lydia's gaze moved past her mother to Jonas. Instead of fear, her expression showed only childish curiosity. "Who are you?" Before Jonas could answer, Eliza intervened. "This is Mr. Reed. He helped make you better. The one who helped her feel safe again," Lydia said with a small smile. Jonas looked startled. Then his face softened. It was the first time Eliza had seen him smile, and it transformed his battle-worn features. "That's right, little one," he said gently. "The one who helped her feel safe again." As evening approached, Jonas gathered his few belongings. "I should leave after dark," he said. "I've risked your safety long enough." Eliza, watching Lydia play with a rag doll, shook her head. "But what if she has a relapse? I don't know how to prepare your medicine." "I'll leave the herbs with instructions," Jonas offered. Lydia's cough interrupted them, less severe than before but still concerning. The child's face flushed again, though not with the dangerous heat of the previous night. Eliza made a swift decision. "Stay," she said, "at least until Lydia is fully recovered." Jonas hesitated. "Army patrols will be searching this area. If they find me here, you and your daughter could be charged as accomplices. We're already sleeping in a barn, Mr. Reed. I don't think my situation can get much worse." She approached him, lowering her voice. "I propose an arrangement. Stay and help Lydia recover completely, and I'll share what food I can and keep your present secret." Jonas considered her offer. "It's risky. Life is risk," Eliza replied simply. "And right now my daughter's health is worth any risk." After a moment's thought, Jonas nodded. "Until she's well, then." A noise from outside drew their attention. Jonas tensed, hand moving to the knife at his belt. "My brother-in-law's voice," Eliza whispered. She moved quickly to a corner of the hayloft and pulled aside a square of flooring, revealing a small hidden compartment beneath. "Robert built this to hide valuables and extra supplies during winter. It should fit you if you need to hide quickly." Jonas looked impressed. "Smart thinking." "Eliza," David's voice called from outside the barn. "Quick," she urged, pushing Jonas toward the hiding place. Once he was concealed, she replaced the flooring and scattered hay over it. Just as David entered the barn below, "I'm up here," she called, smoothing her skirt and hair. Caleb Grayson climbed to the loft, his large frame making the ladder creak. Unlike his brother, David had a brutish quality, handsome in a rough way, but with eyes that held calculation rather than warmth. "Well," he said, looking around the loft, "you've made yourself at home as much as one can in a barn," Eliza replied coolly. David stepped closer. "I spoke with Caldwell today. The lawyer says as Robert's widow, you're entitled to a portion of the farm, unless there's evidence of misconduct." Eliza stiffened. "What are you implying?" "Nothing yet." His eyes roamed over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Robert always said you were cold to him. Made me wonder if you had warmth for someone else. Your brother's comments about our private life were inappropriate," Eliza said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "As are yours now." David moved closer still. "It doesn't have to be difficult, Eliza. I could speak favorably to Mother about letting you back in the house." His hand reached for her hair. "I always did admire this fire." Eliza stepped back. Touch me and I'll scream loud enough for your mother to hear from the house. David's face darkened. You think anyone would believe you over me? A red-haired outsider against a Grayson. He sneered. Think about your daughter, Eliza. Winter comes harsh in these parts. A barn is no place for a child. With that threat hanging in the air, he descended the ladder and left the barn. Once certain he was gone, Eliza moved the hay aside and opened the hidden compartment. Jonas emerged, his expression grim. Your brother-in-law seems concerned for your welfare, he said carefully. David wanted me before Robert did. Eliza replied bitterly. He's never forgiven either of us for that. Jonas looked toward the barn door. Men like that don't give up easily. No, Eliza agreed. They don't. As night fell, Lydia's fever returned with greater intensity than before. The child thrashed in delirium, calling for her father. Jonas prepared a stronger dose of medicine. This will help, but she needs more care than herbs can provide. What else can we do? Eliza asked, desperation in her voice. Jonas looked at her steadily. I can stay longer than planned. Help you care for her properly. He hesitated. But you should know, it means putting yourself in greater danger. Not just from the army, but from your own family. Eliza stroked her daughter's burning forehead. Do I have a choice? We always have choices, Miss Grayson. They're just rarely easy ones. Their eyes met in the dim lantern light, an understanding passing between them that went beyond words. Then stay, she said. Help me save my daughter. After that I will face whatever comes. A week passed in the quiet rhythm of shared secrets. During daylight, Jonas remained hidden in the compartment beneath the floor, emerging only when Eliza signaled it was safe. At night they tended to Lydia together, whose health improved steadily under their care. The evening ritual became a comfort. Eliza would bring what food she could salvage from her meager rations. Jonas would prepare the herbal remedies for Lydia, and together they would sit in the lantern light, talking in hushed voices while the child slept. You were a teacher, Jonas asked one night, whittling a small wooden horse for Lydia. Eliza nodded, mending a tear in Lydia's dress. In Charleston, I taught children not much older than Lydia. And you left it all for James Grayson. There was no judgment in his voice, only curiosity. Robert was different then, charming, full of stories about the frontier. A sad smile touched her lips. He promised adventure and freedom, a life without the constraints of Charleston society. Was it worth it? Jonas asked softly. Eliza's hand stilled. I have Lydia, she said simply. She makes everything worth it. She looked up to find Jonas watching her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. What about you? She asked. Were you always a soldier? My father was military. It seemed the natural path. Jonas returned to his whittling. I was good at following orders, not asking questions. His knife paused, until I couldn't anymore. Lydia stirred in her sleep, and Jonas reached the newly finished wooden horse toward Eliza. For when she wakes, he said. Their fingers brushed as she took it. A momentary contact that sent unexpected warmth through Eliza's hand. She drew back, quickly confused by her reaction. Thank you, she murmured. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the occasional creak of the barn settling, and the soft sounds of Lydia's breathing. I never expected to find kindness here, Eliza admitted finally. After Robert died, I thought I was alone in the world. Jonas set aside his knife. Loneliness is a familiar companion out here. Too many spaces between people. Yet you chose to help us, knowing the risk. He looked at her directly then. Some things are worth the danger they bring. Mrs. Grayson. Eliza, she corrected softly. After all this time, I think you can call me Eliza. The sound of approaching horses shattered the moment. Jonas moved swiftly to the window, peering through a crack in the wooden slats. Army patrol, he whispered, already heading for the hidden compartment. At least 6 men. Eliza quickly helped him into the hiding place, covering him with the false flooring and scattering hay over it. She had barely finished when the barn door opened below. Mrs. Grayson, a formal voice called. Captain Weller, United States Army, may I have a word? Captain James Forrester cut an imposing figure as he climbed to the hayloft. His uniform was immaculate, his posture rigid with military bearing. 2 soldiers followed at a respectful distance. Mrs. Grayson, he said with a curt nod. Apologies for the intrusion at this hour. Eliza stood with her arms crossed, positioning herself between the soldiers and the sleeping Lydia. What can I do for you, Captain? She asked, keeping her voice neutral. We're tracking a deserter, Forrester explained. Lieutenant Elias Rowe, tall man, dark hair, would have injury. His eyes narrowed slightly. He's wanted for treason, aiding the enemy. I've seen no one, Eliza replied steadily. As you can see, my daughter and I live rather isolated. Forrester glanced around the hayloft. Yes, I heard about your situation. My condolences on your husband's death. One of the soldiers nudged the other, whispering something that made both men snicker. Forrester silenced them with a sharp look. Reed is dangerous, Mrs. Grayson. If you see him, do not approach. Report his presence immediately. Of course, Captain. Forrester seemed about to leave when Lydia stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes. Mama, she called. Who are the men? Just visitors, darling. Eliza said quickly. Go back to sleep. But Lydia's attention had fixed on Forrester's uniform. Are you a soldier like Papa was? The captain approached the child with a gentler expression. Yes, little one. Did your father serve? With the 7th Cavalry, Eliza supplied. James Grayson. A Grayson. Good man. I remember him. Forrester knelt to Lydia's level. And what have you there? Lydia held up the wooden horse Jonas had carved. My horse. The one who helped her feel safe again. Made it for me. Eliza's heart stopped. Medicine man, Forrester repeated, his voice sharpening. Lydia has a vivid imagination, Eliza interjected. She means the peddler who sold us the remedy for her fever. A harmless, old man who passes through occasionally. Forrester studied the wooden horse, turning it in his hand. The craftsmanship was distinctive, not the rough work of a farmer, but the precise carving of someone with skill and patience. Fine work for a peddler, he observed. He's quite talented, Eliza agreed, struggling to keep her voice even. Forrester returned the toy to Lydia and stood. His eyes scanned the hayloft once more before settling on Eliza with a calculating gaze. We'll be setting up camp near Grayson Creek for the next few days, he informed her. If you remember anything that might help us locate Reed, send word. As the soldiers departed, Eliza sank to the floor, her legs suddenly weak. She waited until the sound of hooves faded before uncovering Jonas's hiding place. He emerged pale and grim. They're closing in. They suspect something, Eliza agreed. Lydia's comment about the medicine man. It's not your fault, Jonas interrupted. Children speak truth without knowing its danger. Forrester said they're camping at the creek. That's less than 2 miles from here. Jonas paced the small space. I need to leave tonight. If they return tomorrow, they will, Eliza said with certainty. The captain wasn't satisfied with my explanation. Lydia watched them with wide eyes, clutching her wooden horse. Is the medicine man in trouble, Mama? Eliza went to her daughter and hugged her tightly. No, darling, but he needs to go away for a while. She looked over the child's head at Jonas. Unless what? Jonas asked. Eliza's mind raced through possibilities. The Mackenzies have a hunting cabin about 30 miles north near the foothills. No one uses it this time of year. That's a long journey on foot, especially for a child. We could take one of the horses, Eliza suggested, desperation creeping into her voice. Just until Lydia is completely well, then we could all go our separate ways. Jonas studied her face. You're suggesting running away with a wanted man, Eliza. Think about what you're saying. I am thinking, she insisted. I'm thinking about my daughter, who's finally getting better because of you. I'm thinking about David Mackenzie, who's trying to take everything from me. And I'm thinking that for the first time since Robert died, I'm not facing it all alone. The raw honesty in her voice seemed to catch Jonas off guard. He knelt beside her and Lydia, his voice gentle when he spoke. If we're caught, the best you could hope for is being labeled a fool taken in by a deserter. The worst, he didn't finish the thought. And if we stay, Eliza challenged, what future awaits us here? Jonas had no answer for that. The decision to flee was postponed when a violent thunderstorm swept across the plains, that night making travel impossible. Huddled in the hayloft, Eliza, Lydia, and Jonas listened to the rain pounding against the barn roof. Perhaps it's a sign, Jonas said, watching lightning flash through the cracks in the walls. Of what? Eliza asked. That some journeys shouldn't be undertaken lightly. Lydia had fallen asleep between them, clutching her wooden horse. Jonas watched the child with an expression Eliza couldn't quite read. You care for her, Eliza observed. She reminds me of my sister, Jonas admitted. She would have been about Lydia's age now, would have been. Jonas's face hardened. Cholera. While I was away fighting, my mother wrote that she called for me at the end. I'm sorry. War takes more than just those who die in battle, he said quietly. It takes pieces of everyone connected to it. A particularly loud crash of thunder made Lydia whimper in her sleep. Eliza soothed her with a gentle touch. Robert wasn't a good husband, she said suddenly, the confession emerging unexpectedly. Not towards the end. Jonas remained silent, allowing her to continue. He changed after joining the cavalry, became harder, colder. Her fingers absently stroked Lydia's hair. When he came home on leave, he was like a stranger. drinking, raging, about savages and glory. War changes men, Jonas said, though his tone suggested it wasn't an excuse. Did you know him? Eliza asked. James Grayson. Jonas hesitated, then nodded slowly. We served together briefly. He seemed to search for a diplomatic word. He had a reputation. For what? Brutality, Jonas answered honestly, and for boasting about a beautiful red-haired wife waiting at home, even while he stopped abruptly, even while he visited prostitutes. Eliza finished flatly. I suspected as much. The storm raged outside, mirroring the turbulence within. Eliza, years of suspicion confirmed in a single moment by a stranger who had somehow become her confidant. You deserved better, Jonas said simply. Tears slid down Eliza's cheeks, not for Robert, but for the young woman she had been. So full of hope for a future that never materialized. I've lived a lie for years, she whispered, pretending to. More than a man I barely recognized at the end, and now I'm punished for a grief I can hardly feel. Jonas reached across Lydia's sleeping form, his hand covering Eliza's. This time she didn't pull away. The truth has a way of finding light, he said softly, even in the darkest places. They sat in silence as the storm gradually subsided, their hands still joined over the peaceful form of the sleeping child. Tomorrow, Eliza said finally, I'll speak with Judith and David. Make them an offer they won't refuse. What kind of offer? One that gives us all what we want most. Her eyes met his in the dim light. Freedom. Morning arrived with clear skies and renewed purpose. Eliza dressed carefully in her best remaining dress, pinned her red hair severely beneath her bonnet, and instructed Jonas to remain hidden until her return. If I'm not back by noon, assume something went wrong, she told him, checking that Lydia still slept peacefully. This is dangerous, Eliza, Jonas warned. Your brother-in-law isn't a reasonable man, but Judith is a practical woman, Eliza replied, and what I'm offering appeals to that practicality. She descended from the hayloft with determined steps, and crossed the muddy yard to the main house. Through the window she could see David and Judith at the breakfast table, their heads bent in conversation that stopped abruptly when she knocked on the door. David opened it, surprise and suspicion written across his face. What do you want? To speak with both of you, Eliza said, her voice steady. About our mutual future. Judith appeared behind her son. Let her in, David. Let's hear what she has to say. The kitchen was warm and fragrant with the smell of coffee and biscuits. Comforts Eliza and Lydia had been denied for weeks. She refused the seat offered and stood facing her in-laws. I have a proposal, she began without preamble, one that benefits us all. David snorted derisively, but Judith silenced him with a raised hand. Go on. I'll relinquish any claim to Robert's portion of the farm, Eliza stated. In return, you will provide transportation and supplies for Lydia and me to return east. Why would we agree to that? David demanded. The lawyer already said we could contest your claim, because it's cheaper than a legal battle, Eliza replied. And because I know things about this family, about Robert, that would not reflect well if made public. David's face flushed with anger. Are you threatening us? I'm offering a clean break, Eliza corrected. You get the farm without contest and Lydia and I get a fresh start far from here. Judith studied Eliza with narrowed eyes. What exactly do you claim to know about my son? Enough, Eliza said simply. Enough to make people question whether the Mackenzie name is as honorable as you'd have them believe. A tense silence filled the kitchen. Finally, Judith nodded once. When would you leave? Tomorrow, Eliza answered. The morning stage to Cheyenne passes the main road at dawn. That's awfully sudden, David said suspiciously. I've been planning this since you put us in the barn. Eliza lied smoothly. I just needed to ensure Lydia was well enough to travel. Judith considered the proposal. You'll need to sign papers renouncing your claim. I'll have David ride for the lawyer today, and you'll need to provide a written confession of your own, Eliza countered, acknowledging the false accusations about my character that have circulated since Robert's death. Why would we? Because, Eliza interrupted David firmly. I'll need to rebuild my reputation wherever I go. Your written statement ensures I can do that without the shadow of your rumors following me. David started to protest, but Judith laid a restraining hand on his arm. The girl has more spine than I gave her credit for, she said almost admiringly. Very well, Eliza. We have an agreement. As Eliza turned to leave, the sound of horses approaching drew their attention. Through the window they could see Captain Weller and his men riding into the yard. What do they want now? David muttered. I'll speak with them, Judith decided, moving toward the door. Eliza's heart raced. Had they found Jonas? Was Lydia alone in the barn with soldiers searching for a deserter? She followed Judith outside, maintaining a composed exterior despite her inner panic. Captain Weller dismounted and removed his hat. Mrs. Grayson, he greeted both women with a nod. We're conducting a more thorough search of the area today. What are you searching for, Captain? Judith asked. The deserter I mentioned yesterday, Forrester replied, his eyes shifting to Eliza. We have reason to believe he's still in the vicinity. Well, you're welcome to look around our property, Judith offered. Though I can't imagine why a deserter would come here. Forrester gestured to his men, who began to disperse toward the various outbuildings. Two headed directly for the barn. I should check on Lydia, Eliza said, trying to keep her voice casual. She's still recovering from her fever. Actually, Forrester said, blocking her path. I'd like to ask you a few more questions, Mrs. Grayson, about that wooden horse your daughter had. Eliza forced herself to meet his gaze steadily. What about it? It's strange, Forrester said. Lieutenant Reed was known for his wood carving. It was something of a joke among the men. A lieutenant with the hands of a craftsman. Before Eliza could respond, a shout came from the barn. Captain, you'll want to see this. The world seemed to slow around Eliza as Forrester strode toward the barn. She followed, her legs moving as if through deep water, dread filling her chest. Inside, one of the soldiers stood at the base of the ladder, holding up Jonas's blood-stained shirt. Found this hidden in the hay, sir. Forrester took the shirt, examining the cavalry insignia still visible. Despite the blood and dirt, his gaze hardened as he turned to Eliza. Care to explain this, Mrs. Grayson? Before she could answer, David pushed forward. I can explain it, Captain. My sister-in-law is leaving tomorrow. She and the child are returning east. He shot Eliza a meaningful look. We've just finalized the arrangements. Is that so? Forrester asked skeptically. It is, Judith confirmed, surprising Eliza with her support. Eliza has no reason to harbor a deserter. She's been too busy caring for her sick child in the accommodations we provided. The older woman had the grace to look slightly embarrassed at this admission. Forrester looked between the three of them, clearly sensing an undercurrent he didn't fully understand. I'd still like to search the entire property thoroughly, he insisted. Of course, David agreed, but I'm sure you'll find nothing more than that shirt, probably blown here by the storm last night. As the soldiers continued their search, climbing to the hayloft where Lydia now sat awake and confused, Eliza held her breath. She knew Jonas's hiding place was well concealed, but one wrong move from Lydia could reveal everything. Medicine man? Lydia asked innocently as the soldiers moved around the loft. Eliza quickly went to her daughter. No, darling. These are soldiers like Papa was. Forrester watched the interaction closely, his suspicion evident. But after a hour of searching that yielded nothing more, he was forced to admit defeat. We'll be moving north tomorrow, he informed them as his men mounted their horses. If you see or hear anything, your patriotic duty is to report it immediately. Only when the patrol had disappeared down the road did Eliza allow herself to breathe normally again. She rushed back to the barn, frantically searching for any sign of Jonas. Jonas, she whispered urgently, checking the hidden compartment. It was empty. Fear gripped her heart, until a voice spoke from the shadows of the hayloft's far corner. They almost found me, Jonas said quietly, emerging from behind a stack of old harnesses. One of them stepped directly on the hiding place, but the wood held. Eliza nearly collapsed with relief. They're leaving tomorrow, heading north. And so are you, Jonas observed. I heard what David told the captain. It was the only way, Eliza explained. We made a deal, my claim to the farm in exchange for passage east for Lydia and me. Jonas nodded slowly. It's for the you and Lydia will be safe in the east, away from all of this. And you, Eliza asked. His expression grew distant. I'll find my way perhaps north to Canada where a man might start fresh. The air between them filled with unspoken words and possibilities that seemed suddenly remote. Their brief time together, forged in danger and necessity, was coming to an end. We leave at dawn, Eliza said finally. The stage to Cheyenne passes the main road early. Jonas reached for her hand. Then we have one more night to prepare you for the journey. The stagecoach station was little more than a wooden platform, and a small shelter 30 miles east of the Grayson farm. Eliza and Lydia had arrived just before sunrise, transported by David in a wagon loaded with their few possessions and provisions for the journey. The parting had been brief and cold. Judith handed Eliza an envelope containing the promised written statement clearing her name of any impropriety, along with a small purse of coins. For the child, the older woman had said, a flicker of something like regret crossing her face as she touched Lydia's cheek one last time. David had been less sentimental, clearly relieved to be rid of them both. The signed papers renouncing Eliza's claim to the farm had been exchanged, the bargain complete. Now Eliza sat on a bench outside the station house, Lydia dozing against her shoulder as they waited for the stage that would take them to Cheyenne and from there by train back to Charleston. The rising sun painted the vast landscape in shades of gold and amber. Despite everything, Eliza felt a pang at leaving this wild, beautiful country. For all its harshness, it had a grandeur that the confined streets of Charleston lacked. "Ticket to Charleston's a long way," observed the station manager, an elderly man with a tobacco-stained beard. "Yes," Eliza agreed, "but it's home, or it was once." The man nodded sagely. "Folks often circle back to beginnings when life gets rough." He glanced at Lydia. "Pretty child. Got her papa's dark hair, I see." Eliza didn't correct him. Sometimes, simple stories were the ones people understood. Stories were simpler than truth sometimes. A distant sound caught her attention. Not the expected rumble of the approaching stagecoach, but the steady rhythm of a single horse's hooves. Eliza tensed, instinctively drawing Lydia close. A rider appeared on the road, silhouetted against the rising sun. As he drew nearer, Eliza's heart leapt. Even with his hat pulled low and a kerchief covering much of his face, she recognized the broad shoulders and straight posture of Elias Rowe. He dismounted a few yards away, approaching cautiously. The station manager had disappeared inside, leaving them momentarily alone. "You shouldn't be here," Eliza whispered as he reached them. "It's too dangerous." Jonas pulled down the kerchief, revealing a face that had become dear to her in such short time. "I had to see you safely off," he said simply. Lydia stirred and opened her eyes. "Medicine man," she exclaimed happily, reaching for him. Jonas knelt before the child, his smile gentle. "Hello, little one. Feeling better?" "All better," Lydia declared. "Are you coming with us to Charleston?" A shadow passed over Jonas's face. "No, Lydia. I'm going a different way. North," Eliza said knowingly. "To Canada." Jonas nodded. "There's a doctor there, man I served with before the war. He wrote that they need medical help in the frontier settlements." He glanced down at Lydia. "Seems my time with the Lakota healer might serve some purpose after all." The sound of the approaching stagecoach carried to them on the morning breeze. "That's your ride," Jonas said, standing. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden carving. "A bird with wings spread in flight. For the journey," he said, placing it in Lydia's hand. "It's beautiful," Eliza murmured. "Freedom always is," Jonas replied, his eyes holding her. The stagecoach appeared around the bend, the driver already slowing the team as he approached the station. "This is goodbye then," Eliza said, her voice catching slightly. Jonas looked at her intently. "It doesn't have to be." "What do you mean?" "Come north," he said simply. "With me." Eliza stared at him in astonishment. "To Canada." "But Charleston is your past," Jonas finished for her. "Just as the army is mine." He took her hand. "I'm not promising an easy life, Eliza. The northern territories are harsh, the winters brutal, but it would be a life of truth, not lies. Place where Lydia could grow up free from judgment, where your red hair would be just hair, not a mark of difference." The stagecoach rolled to a stop before them, the driver calling down, "Two for Cheyenne?" Eliza looked at the coach, then at Jonas. Her mind raced. Charleston meant safety, familiarity, but also memories of the young woman who had so eagerly abandoned it all for Robert's false promises. The ticket in her hand represented a retreat to what was known, but not necessarily what was right. "What about Captain Weller?" she asked. "The army won't stop looking for you. In Canada, I'll be beyond their reach," Jonas replied. "And in time, other deserters will become more important. The war won't last forever, Eliza." "Ma'am," the driver called impatiently. "Are you boarding or not? We've got a schedule to keep." Lydia looked up at her mother, then at Jonas. With a child's simple wisdom, she said, "I like the medicine man, Mama. He makes the hurt go away." Eliza felt tears spring to her eyes. In that moment, the decision seemed both impossibly difficult and remarkably clear. She looked at the Charleston-bound stagecoach, then at the letter in her hand from Martha Grayson, a document that would allow her to reclaim her old life, her old identity. With deliberate movements, she tore it in half. "No," she called to the driver. "We won't be going to Cheyenne after all." Jonas's face registered surprise, then dawning hope. "Are you certain?" he asked quietly. Eliza took Lydia's hand in one of hers and reached for Jonas with the other. "No," she admitted honestly. "I'm not certain of anything except that I don't want to go backward anymore." The stagecoach driver shrugged and signaled to his team. As the coach pulled away, heading east toward Cheyenne, and the world Eliza had once known, she felt a curious lightness. "The northern road will be difficult," Jonas warned again as he helped them onto his horse, "especially with a child." Eliza settled Lydia in front of her, the child already chattering excitedly about their adventure. Over the little girl's head, her eyes met Jonas's. "Some journeys are worth the hardship," she said, echoing his words from days before. They rode north, as the sun cleared the horizon, casting long shadows behind them. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger and hardship, but also the promise of a new beginning, one built on truth rather than expectation. Lydia clutched her wooden bird, her face turned up to the boundless sky. "Are we going home now, Mama?" she asked. Eliza looked at Jonas, who rode slightly ahead, leading them toward the distant mountains that marked the border and beyond. "Yes, darling," she answered softly. "I believe sometimes the path to freedom requires leaving behind not just places but expectations." In a world that labeled her by her red hair and widowhood, Eliza found the courage to rewrite her own story. What would you have chosen? The safety of the familiar past, or the uncertain promise of a future built on truth? Would you choose safety or truth? Would you have torn up that ticket to Charleston? And what barn in your life became the unexpected shelter where you found your strength? Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next story about a rancher who adopts a little boy, but a woman gets in his way.